Thank you. Thanks, Roger and Louise, for inviting me. It's always a highlight at this meeting, and I love the glow up of the venue. It's a beautiful place, beautiful facility. So excited to present. So talking today about posterior cervical foraminotomy versus disc replacement, I saw on the program that this was on the motion preservation section. So I think a lot of this talk will be kind of thinking about foraminotomy. But when it came to this idea of motion preservation and disc arthroplasty, I wanted to talk a little bit about some work we've done recently, asking, how do we quantify the value of things like motion preservation, but more generally just advances in sort of MIS techniques. And so, this is a paper that we have in press right now, and the motivation for this paper was just in thinking about how we describe outcomes in the literature. So if you look, we usually compare treatment 1 and treatment 2, and they'll all kind of have, discrete time points. Right, great. They'll have discrete time points where we've sort of measured outcomes. We kind of see, okay, we compare the averages and we say, okay, one is not better than the other. And so for something like this, okay, if that's a 1-year follow-up time point, you'll say, okay, these two treatments are similar at 1 year. But if you look at the data that we actually kind of have access to, this is sort of what you see in terms of all the patients when they fill out their outcomes. Like most people, if you're collecting a 6-month outcome, you might have a window that says, okay, anything from 4 months to 7 months is okay for 6-month outcomes or whatever. Most registries will set that window. And if you look across your data, what you'll see is a pretty big spread in terms of when patients are responding to the information. And if you look even more closely, you'll see that there's lots of different recovery curves hiding in a graph like this, right? So there's someone whose recovery does that, there's another person whose recovery does that, there may be another one that does that, and they all kind of roughly end up in the same point. And if you do the averages across, you may conclude again that these treatments are similar, but what you're really missing is a sense of their cumulative disability or their journey through this recovery process. And so, we kind of wanted to find a way to describe a lived experience from this data, if you will. And so what we did was we used regression to build a sort of an average of all the recovery curves across multiple patients. So you kind of can see a smoothed out recovery curves. And once you do that, then instead of reporting outcomes at specific intervals, you can start to think about recovery as being something that's an area under the curve. So it's almost like an integral of recovery and a way to measure sort of cumulative disability across whatever interval you want to specify. And so when you take this and you apply it to, for example, ACDF and CDR, obviously lots of literature on this topic. And even we've looked at our registry in the past and basically concluded, okay, CDF, CDR are basically very similar operations, largely similar patient outcomes. But then when you kind of take this approach and look at the integrated curves for all these different outcome measures, specifically NDI, neck pain, arm pain, what you'll see is that, when you traditionally compare averages, there's no difference. Across the time frame that you look at, there's a cumulative increase in disability for ACDF versus disc replacement, for example, for NDI, for neck pain, arm pain seems to be similar. And you can also see that, when you go from 1 to 2 level disc replacement, doesn't really change much. Like the cumulative disability over time is similar, but going from 1 level to 2 level ACDF is not exactly the same, where it tends to add some disability. It's a kind of interesting, I think, way to think about motion preservation and the value that you're adding. But the rest of this talk, CDR gets all the attention, but what about foraminotomy? And foraminotomy, is like one of the most neglected operations in spine surgery. It's kind of sitting there quietly, crying in the corner. And it's borne out in the literature. So if you look at the trends in treatment of radiculopathy, what you see is you see a steady decrease in the amount of foraminotomy that's performed and a steady increase in the amount of disc arthroplasty. So all the disc arthroplasty that we're doing is almost all pretty much coming at the expense of foraminotomy. So this question of CDR versus foraminotomy obviously is pretty relevant. And I think if you ask, is this adoption of CDR over PCF, is there data to support that adoption? The answer is the data is kind of sparse. So, there's one paper coming out of CSRS, this is a recently published paper that looked at this question, specifically looking at minimally invasive posterior cervical foraminotomy. And what they found was that the minimally invasive foraminotomies had a higher rate of revision. All of these were converted to ACDF. And in the ACDF cohort, they did have obviously more adjacent segment degeneration. This is another paper that looked at a similar question. They basically found no significant differences in reoperation rates between disc arthroplasty and minimally invasive posterior foraminotomy, and similar rates of arm pain achievement. This paper, I also have like a personal problem with it because this table is like a complete mess. You kind of see 11 is like 10%, but I don't know where they got 11 from because 3 plus 2 is not equal to 11. And it just is very hard to interpret this paper. But essentially what they were saying is that similar improvements in arm pain, there was a difference in reoperation rates for open foraminotomies, but when they looked specifically at MIS versus CDA, they did not find a difference in the revision rate. And other literature from other groups, again, showing similar outcomes, but like everything else, there might be a slight trend favoring CDA because if you look at the McNabb criteria, there's slightly more excellent outcomes for disc arthroplasty versus foraminotomy in this sort of unilateral radiculopathy cohort. And I think that matters to us as practitioners. When you treat, it basically means for every 10 patients you treat, about one more will come into the office and describe themselves as excellent versus good. And over time, those differences tend to add up and influence, I think, our decision-making about treatment. And so the clinical outcomes, I think, largely similar. I wanted our research team to look at that lived experience, so we adopted the same technique to the foraminotomy and disc replacement cohort to see if there was any difference in cumulative disability over time. This is sort of preliminary data, but essentially, in our experience at least, that the overall recovery profiles after disc replacement and foraminotomy seem to be largely similar even out to a year. There's more data comparing foraminotomy and ACDF, showing, again, largely similar findings. I'll kind of flip through this, but reoperation rates have been shown to be similar in a few different studies. And I think the other important thing in all these papers, the point that I'd want to highlight, is that most of them are revising their posterior cervical foraminotomies to ACDF. And so they're revising it to ACDF. So I think one of the questions that falls out of this literature is if cervical foraminotomy is basically as effective as ACDF and probably CDR for arm pain, with the only major concern being a slightly higher risk of revision, is there a way to kind of think more thoughtfully about which patients to indicate for this technique? Is there data on which cervical foraminotomies are most likely to fail? And so this is one of, this is sort of a keystone paper. It's one of the largest series of cervical foraminotomy, not MIS, but open. But regardless, they kind of provided reoperation rates about 9% at a year, about 25% out to 10 years. And what they found when they looked at their risk of reoperation, really 3 times higher in patients with neck pain and radiculopathy versus radiculopathy alone. So I think that's like an important predictor for failure. A couple other important papers and radiographic factors to keep in mind. I really like this paper out of Korea, which looked at the shape of the foramen as a risk factor for failure of foraminotomy. And basically, you can have one of 2 types. You can have this V shape where the exit zone is wider, and a more parallel foramen where it's narrow all the way through. And the latter was found to have an increased risk of failure. Similarly, another paper that basically showed anterior osteophytes that are greater than 50% of the foramen and narrower decompression, as you might expect, can predict failure. I think this is an important concept. If you're focally decompressing over the side of the compression, the root itself sometimes gets caught at that exit zone. So this idea of making sure your decompression is wide enough is really important when you're doing these techniques. But I think coming back to the original point, or one of the original points, was all of these were converted to ACDF. So can failed posterior foraminotomies be converted to disc arthroplasty, or conversely, can failed arthroplasty be rescued by minimally invasive foraminotomy? Again, there's not much data out there. I'm sure all of us have anecdotal experience. Certainly, I've converted some foraminotomy patients to CDR. But if you look at the literature, there's not a ton out there on this topic. This is probably the largest study that had about 6 out of 15 patients that were converted, and they were all, per report, treated successfully without long-term evidence of instability. And the biomechanical data seems to suggest that basically, this is a normal disc, this is after arthroplasty, this is arthroplasty plus foraminotomy, and this is this is arthroplasty plus a laminectomy and foraminotomy. So you can kind of see that there is a gradual increase in motion with each release that you do, as you might expect, but the difference between this and this is fairly modest, and then that foraminotomy range is considered within normal limits or published limits of normal. And then, just importantly, I think not all CDR are motion preservation. This is data that you should take with a grain of salt, but the incidence of HO is high. I know we debate the clinical relevance of that, but I think it's an important factor to consider as well. So kind of putting this all together, I think this is probably roughly my decision-making algorithm. So for a unilateral radiculopathy at 1 or 2 levels, figure out if the patient is a candidate for arthroplasty. So it means a relatively tall disc, bone quality is super important, alignment is important. And if the answer is no, then in the spirit of motion preservation, my hope would be to do a foraminotomy for unilateral radiculopathy without central stenosis. But if they have substantial neck pain or a parallel-shaped foramen, I'm more likely to do an ACDF. And I think for that arthroplasty patient, it really comes down to the patient conversation. Some people are very averse to having an implant in their body or that kind of fear. And so I think in those cases, I think foraminotomy is a great option. And then there's others that really the idea of a revision surgery or early revision surgery is something that they just cannot reconcile. And I think for those patients, I think disc arthroplasty is an important thing to consider. And I'll stop there. Thank you.